Welcome into another episode of 3 Up, 3 Down. I am your host, Rob Wong, back with another podcast. I was away last week enjoying some vacation time, so life has gotten in the way a little bit, but back with another episode before the trade deadline coming up on Monday, August the 3rd. The Blue Jays have one more series before the trade deadline as they return home to host the St. Louis Cardinals beginning on Friday evening down at Rogers Center. And all the talk right now is, what are the Blue Jays going to do at the deadline? How many players are they going to move? Is it possible that they buy at all? I floated on Twitter after the game on Wednesday that must be tough for the Blue Jays to look at the seasons guys like Dylan Cease, Louis Varland, Tyler Rogers are having, and the way Jeff Hoffman has been pitching, and thinking, boy, if we could just sneak into the playoffs, we would have a chance in a 3-game or a 5-game series with those types of weapons. But if you listen to any of the national insiders out there, even some of the local beat reporters, it does seem at this point that the Blue Jays are going to be selling. They are currently 5.5 games out of the third wildcard spot with 6 teams in front of them that they would have to beat in order to make the postseason. It would be quite a feat for them to be able to do that. Interestingly enough, you look at one of the insiders, and Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, he has floated this out there. I know others as well have done the same, that could be possible. The Blue Jays sell off some of their expiring contracts, some of their free agents to be, and at the same time, they are a bit of a buyer trying to pick up some controllable assets, whether it's a starting pitcher, whether it's a position player, and then you just roll the dice and see what happens, and maybe you can still sneak in there. So you're trying to get some of your off-season work done now before the end of the year, and we don't know, of course, what's going to happen next season, but that could be a scenario where the Blue Jays try to make some moves for not only next year and the years beyond, but this year as well, and maybe try to find some magic over the final 2 months of the season. But it's just been a frustrating season all year long. There's been no consistency, especially when it comes to the offense. And looking at the process for this offense, the ex-WOBA, some of the underlying statistics as far as offensive process goes, just continues to be bottom of the barrel in Major League Baseball. I made the case yesterday during the game when the Blue Jays were struggling to score that this might be the worst offense since 2008. That Blue Jays team did not hit a lot of home runs. They had no power. They were brutal. And people have pointed at 2024. Well, at least they had Vlad. 2019 was a rebuilding year. Well, that team hit a ton of homers. They at least had some power production. This team cannot hit home runs to save their life. They do not have a ton of extra base pop. It's been pretty dreadful at times, and that could be one of the reasons that this front office is looking at this team and thinking, okay, even if we do decide to try to make a run for it, can our offense do enough to win us ball games? And right now you would say not consistently enough. They found a way to win 2 in Washington against the Nationals. The pitching was a big reason why, of course, but there were some timely hits in the series finale on Wednesday for them to get the job done. So we're looking at who could be on the move here. Kevin Gausman, Dalton Varsho, Shane Bieber, right at the top of the list. I think you can throw George Springer in there with the caveat that he does have 10-5 rights, so he basically has full control over where he wants to go, what he wants to do. We know he recently had a baby boy, so that kind of throws a wrinkle into things as well. Do you want to be leaving your family with a child that was born less than 2 months ago? That could be something that is a pause for George Springer on wanting to leave the Blue Jays. So he's sort of in the maybe category at this point. So I think if you're Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins, those are the 3 guys you're looking at in Kevin Gausman, Dalton Varsho, and Shane Bieber. And Gausman and Varsho specifically, I think are very interesting from the standpoint of Gausman, of course, being a bit of a workhorse. Maybe he doesn't have the elite top end rotation ability anymore. It's been a bit of a rough go for him, especially of late. But the guy posts, doesn't really ever get injured. We have to remember with this season, there's still 2 months remaining, and a lot of teams are just going to need innings and quality innings, especially to get them to the end of the season and potentially into the playoffs if they are teams with aspirations of making the postseason. So there is a ton of value there. Obviously, Tariq Skubal is the top name on the market. There's Freddie Peralta, whose name has been thrown out there, and there's a lot of interest with him. If you're a team looking at either Freddie Peralta or Kevin Gausman, bit of a toss-up. Both guys offer a track record, of course, but their success this year has been to varying degrees. And then when it comes to Varsho, there are basically no center fielders on this trade market, and I think that does give him a bit of a boost. It doesn't mean he's going to be bringing back an elite prospect by any means, but that definitely means there are going to be a lot of more teams interested than if he was, say, a left fielder, a corner infielder, or a position where there was a ton of surplus. There just are not a lot of outfielders out there. And we know he has the ability to still be a good defender. He's not the elite one that we saw a couple years ago. The bat still from time to time wanes here and there, but he's had some stretches this year where he's been able to figure it out offensively. So I think if you're a contending team in need of center field help, he definitely is an intriguing candidate. Shane Bieber, meanwhile, we saw what happened on Tuesday night. Just an absolutely wretched start for him. Said he couldn't grip the ball. It was pretty hot. He was pretty sweaty. You could see it just from the broadcast. He was absolutely drenched in sweat. Looked like he just got out of the shower. Absolutely soaked. I don't know how much you can read into that. If it's true, he was having trouble gripping the ball. But again, not just like Kevin Gausman, a guy who historically has had a bit of a track record since he came back from Tommy John with the Blue Jays. It's been up and down, of course. He had those 2 really good starts prior to Tuesday. And again, another guy that can fill in and help teams give them innings, because that is so important at this time of the year just to get to the end of the season. Shane Bieber won't be bringing back a Cal Steven type of return, I would imagine, at this point, but I think there's still going to be a lot of teams looking at him and are at least interested, because we've seen him when he is at his maybe not best, but when he is really good, he can be a pretty strong back-end pitcher for any rotation that is looking to make some noise here and get into the postseason. So I think Shane Bieber, Dalton Varsho, Kevin Gausman are the 3 guys right at the top of the list. I think the Blue Jays will listen on Jeff Hoffman. I don't know how active they're going to be trying to move him. I think because of the fact, again, sort of similar to Dalton Varsho, that there are not a ton of back-end relievers available right now on the trade market. It doesn't seem like Mason Miller is going to move at this point. Adrian Morejon, his teammate on the Padres. The Padres are right in the mix now for a playoff spot, so I can't imagine that they're going to be selling. That would be pretty strange, considering they're just a game and a half back of a wild card spot. So Jeff Hoffman, if the Blue Jays float him out there, could definitely be one of the more popular names available as far as the reliever market goes. He is making a lot of money, of course, and we know the Blue Jays historically are not afraid to eat some money in order to get a better return. So that could be a possibility. Tyler Rogers, I know people, I've seen it on Twitter, do not want to trade him whatsoever. But again, here's another guy who, similar to Jeff Hoffman, because there's not a ton of back-end relievers available, I think he could draw a ton of interest. He, of course, is on the back end of his career, closer to 40 than he is to 30, so I think we have to remember that, despite the fact that he throws the way he does and seemingly has a rubber arm and never gets hurt. Father Time comes for everyone, and I'm not sure how much higher his value is going to get in the ensuing years here. So the Blue Jays do have to weigh that, because if there is a season next year, they're going to be trying to win. They're not going to be blowing up this team. I think the Louis Varland talk is absolutely insane, that people are wondering if the Blue Jays should move him. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Similar to Alejandro Kirk. I don't know why people are trying to trade this guy who was one of the best catchers in all of baseball a season ago. He's on a very team-friendly contract, and the Blue Jays, whatever return they get right now, where his value is not at the bottom of the barrel, but it's obviously lower than where it was a year ago. Just doesn't make a ton of sense to be moving out a guy like Alejandro Kirk or moving out a guy like Louis Varland when we're all expecting this Blue Jays team to be trying to win ball games next year. So those are the guys I'd be looking at. I think Nathan Lucas could be interesting as well. Another guy sort of similar to Tyler Rogers in that he's a lot older than you would think at this stage of his career. Nathan Lucas having a solid season, perfect platoon partner, perfect fourth outfielder on a championship team most likely. But he's going to be 33 next year, and how much longer can he continue to do this? He's making absolutely nothing. He's making peanuts, so that is obviously a huge bonus for him, and a solid major league player, but again, maybe his value is never going to be higher, and if the Blue Jays are looking for an upgrade at center field heading into next season, maybe that's an avenue that they go down, because the alternative is Nathan Lucas is your everyday center fielder next year against right-handed pitching, and I don't know if I love that. He is fine, but I think I would prefer to have someone with a little bit more defensive prowess in center field. Lucas is great in the corners, of course, with that big arm, but maybe he's a guy that the Blue Jays kind of throw out there and see what they can get. We know Jeff Passan of ESPN said that the Blue Jays very recently have been gauging the market on some of their players, so maybe Nathan Lucas was a guy that teams asked about, or maybe the Blue Jays were wondering, what would you give us for a guy like Nathan Lucas? So we will find out. I doubt that these 3 games are going to change the equation too much. If the Blue Jays sweep the Cardinals and then things go their way on the out-of-town scoreboard, maybe things get crazy. Maybe the Blue Jays do get a little funky here and try to make a move to push for the playoffs, but it would seem unlikely at this point. As I said, a lot of the insiders out there basically said that the Blue Jays are going to be sellers, and hard to believe that they wouldn't be at this point with the way the standings look for this team. So last week, didn't get a chance to talk about it because I was away and didn't get to do a pod, but a couple of weeks ago, of course, the Blue Jays unveiled their first player statue, and Joe Carter is the statue, of course, sitting right outside Rogers Center, celebrating his Game 6 home run in the 1993 World Series. I was lucky enough to go to that game and work that game and get to interview some of those players from those championship teams. And just as a kid that grew up watching this organization, this franchise, those teams, it was cool. I've gotten a chance to speak with a bunch of those guys, of course, but just to be around those players that I grew up watching on those 93 World Series VHS tapes, back when I didn't have cable television and only had 6 channels, had to watch something. So watch the 93 World Series over and over and over again on VHS. And I've spoken to Pat Henkin before. I said it on Twitter. He was my favorite pitcher growing up, but it was cool to chat with him again. Juan Guzman, never chatted with Juan Guzman before. Cool personality, cool guy. It was funny to hear his stories about those championship teams. And as a kid, always wanted a blue glove. Started as a pitcher when I played baseball as a kid. And Juan Guzman was definitely someone that I enjoyed watching growing up. So cool to be around those players and that day. And of course, so unfortunate that we find out after the fact that Duane Ward had passed away prior to the ceremony. And it's sad to think that there were some people there that day, whether it was with the Blue Jays organization or maybe even some of the players had an inkling that something had gone wrong. And Duane Ward, unfortunately, passing away prior to that ceremony. Such a sad story and such a sort of sad bookend on what was supposed to be such a celebratory weekend and celebratory day for this franchise. But, at least Duane Ward got to spend his final days with some of his favorite people on planet Earth and reminiscing about those times on those championship teams. He was such a key piece, and the Blue Jays do not win those World Series titles without him. I mentioned it on Twitter, my Duane Ward story. Back when I was an intern at Sportsnet 590 The Fan, I had to go meet Duane Ward outside prior to his radio hit with Bob McCowan on Primetime Sports. I was told he was going to show up outside the building, and I thought, okay, somebody's going to drop him off. Maybe he's taking a taxi. No, here's Duane Ward pulling up in a Ford Mustang rental, a big red Ford Mustang. I hop in, I take him into the parking garage. Couldn't have been nicer. Super fun guy to chat with. We bring him up into the radio studio where that radio floor, there's a room called the Bullpen, funnily enough, and that's where all the producers and the interns worked. It's sort of the pseudo green room that we had where sometimes guests would wait in there. And back then we had all these media guides for all these different sports teams, but including the Blue Jays, and Duane was looking at them and he was kind of geeking out over them, and he was asking me like, hey, can I take any of these? I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like, no one ever uses these things, especially the ones from the 80s and the 90s, of course. I can't remember if he actually took it or not, but I just remember he was so into them, looking at all the old Blue Jays media guides. And then afterwards, he does his radio hit. I help him back into the parking garage, back into the car, drops me out in front, and we say our goodbyes, and that was it. But just a little moment. It wasn't a long one, but left a mark on me just for how nice Duane Ward was. And I think we saw a lot of those stories out on social media just with people's interactions with Duane Ward over the years, and just how welcoming he was, how generous he was with his time. Never had an ego, was always willing to talk to anyone and everyone about those World Series teams and their Blue Jays memories. So he did a lot for baseball in this country with a lot of the camps that the Blue Jays held as well, trying to build up the grassroots of that sport in this country, and he will be missed. He was an incredible person by all accounts, and just really unfortunate the way things happened during that, what was supposed to be a celebratory weekend with the Blue Jays and the unveiling of the statue. But rest in peace, Duane Ward. You will be missed. That'll do it for another edition of 3 Up, 3 Down. You can follow me on Twitter at RobWong34. Make sure to give the pod a 5-star review, share, follow, do all that good stuff. Give us a like. It helps out the algorithm. The next time I will speak to you will be once again on Thursday. We'll do it after the trade deadline and try to recap everything that goes down with this Blue Jays team, whether they're selling, whether they're buying, whether they're doing both. It's going to be a fun next couple of days here just to see how active the Blue Jays are going to be on the trade market. That'll do it for 3 Up, 3 Down. I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you in a week's time.